What does his design look like?
Carrying a shield? What is he carrying?
He doesn't have a shield. Him and Shu are the defenders that don't have shields.
She has a shield. Well, the skin does.
She doesn't. She has a knife.
They don't need shields. They're just that bulky.
She's not bulky, Temple. Yu is the first 6-star primal defender in Arknights, as well as the limited unit in the Chinese New Year banner and the newest Sui sibling, who shares the same class as his flat and fertile sister. But first, do you like integrated strategies? Do you think it's a mode that rewards planning and the strategy while also being very fun? Well, I certainly agree with you. That's why I help in the making of every edition of the Bingo Lockout, which is an IS bingo tournament officially sponsored by arknights, and I'm also helping with this year's IS5 edition, who is today's sponsor. I can certainly say that in every edition only the best and most well-prepared player won, as you can see from this winner interview from the first one.
Honestly, that was a very close game, and thank you guys so much for hosting this.
How'd you set up for the tournament?
Oh, okay. So I did nothing.
Touching, inspiring. I wonder why we decided to start increasing the base difficulty. So, if you're curious as to how to even play bingo in IS and want to watch people compete for Whistle and Logos plushes on this officially sponsored tournament being cast by many well-known CCs, myself included, don't forget to tune in for the streams during the dates on screen at the Lungmen Dragons YouTube and Twitch channel. Again, thanks for the bingo team for sponsoring this video, and let's get back to you. So let's analyze his kit and see how he fares overall, starting as always with S1.
急げあんまりいいことじゃないでしょ次は悪いことするんじゃないぞ
As you can read on screen right now, this is a very basic skill. Deploy you, he gets a passive taunt, and when you use S1, every enemy that attacks him gets burn injury, which is the name of the damage dealt to the circular bar below them that procs burn when depleted. And you even get a nice plus 70% max HP and defense on top of it. The best application of it is against ranged heavy maps, with a lot of fragile enemies swarming your team with projectiles, since burn damage is extremely efficient at dealing with low HP mobs, taking only one proc to kill them oftentimes. Probably the most obvious comparison to make is Penance S3, since the idea of attracting projectiles and reflecting the damage back is pretty much identical. They even have the same type of defensive recovery. But even with all those similarities, the execution is very different. First off, Yu is just better at killing most ranged enemies, and that's because they are usually weak enough to die to one burn proc. He is also not affected by res and damage reduction, so he can apply his burn very easily. Penance's reflection isn't weak, but it's just not as strong. Especially when you start cranking up the defense, that's when you can really see the difference, since you can just ignore most defensive stats of his burn. So his S1 can work against pretty much anyone, and it's even further boosted by his talent one. What it does is first give him 25% sanctuary when blocking, which for a defender that's gonna sit on the front line tanking hits is already very easy to do. But this is the actual crazy part. Yu deals arch damage and applies burn to every enemy he blocks. The good type of burn apply, where it doesn't depend on enemy res or damage reduction, the same way ops like Virtuoso do it. And I really wanna stress how strong this is. I already showed you how burn is great at killing low HP mobs, so having this talent on a defender makes so you can simply deploy Yu and just leave him there without even needing to use his skills. He's perfectly capable of holding down a lane like that, only really needing to activate it if an elite shows up. For a skill that's all about getting hit, this talent fits perfectly, because it lets him not depend as much on the attack speed of enemies he blocks to apply burn, which makes S1 great even against waves of enemies. It does have some big issues though, which is my next topic. And the first is exactly what you're watching right now. I did say S1 is great against waves of enemies, but that's only half true, because even with Talent 1 he's still very reliant on getting hit. So if you get a big wave of just melee enemies, it really starts falling off, because he can only normally block 3 enemies at most, so only those 3 enemies can get burned at a time. Another consequence of that is, again, what you'll see right now. On this clip, he was able to hold off the wave with Cardigan's help, but notice these 2 enemies that managed to go past him. They're gonna stay like that until the end of the stage, even if I use S1 again, because like I said, he's reliant on getting attacked, and Talent 1 can't even help here, because Cardigan is the one that's blocking them. Which is why I said earlier that Penance executed the idea differently, because her S3 gives a fucking 400% attack increase. And yes, that does serve to make her reflections stronger, but it also allows Penance herself to do the beating if she needs to, so she isn't completely helpless in situations like this. Another issue S1 has is elite enemies in the middle of waves to be more precise, and that's because of the way both elemental proc and burn damage work. First there's burn, which deals 7k damage when applied, which is more than enough to kill most normal enemies in the game, but there are a lot of elites who can survive that. And this is where the elemental proc issue comes in. Every time you proc one, there's a 10-second cooldown before you can reapply it on the same enemy, so if they don't die to the initial burn, you can't do anything for 10 seconds until the timer's over, which is a huge problem when against big enemy waves and can lead to a lot of licks. If only there was an up whose talent increases the burn proc damage, while also applying an aura that constantly damages enemies around it. That way she could solve the damage issue on elites while also helping apply burn herself. And even make use of the minus 20 res of burn proc to help that aura damage. Can't imagine who that 40-year-old hag would be though. Overall, I think US1 is very well designed. It's definitely not as strong as his other skills in most cases, but it is viable, and it even has a niche where it shines in ranged heavy maps. So this is a great option to have in your pocket if you ever need it. Gonna show off his teleportable.
Are you gonna teleport the boss?
You'll see.
Okay, I'll be amazed.
Huh?
Yeah, so where was the teleport?
Which brings us to US2.
せかさないであんまりいい心地じゃないでしょ次は悪いことするんじゃないぞ白露に鉱山で植え秋分に平原で植える
Metaslavely speaking, this is going to be his best skill, though a lot of people will probably prefer his S3 over this. But regardless, S2 is a very strong skill, both offensively and defensively, which might be surprising to you given how little text it has, but all the effects here are very strong. The first and most unique one is that you will teleport all ground enemies in range to his position. And when I say in range, I mean everyone in this area. Then S2 will give plus 2 block, plus 160% max HP, plus 290% attack, and turn all attacks into arts damage. There's quite a lot to unpack here, so let's start with that first effect. The first thing you'll probably remember when I say teleport is his sister, and I wouldn't blame you since I'm always thinking about her too, but what you're most likely thinking about is her S3, since the most unique thing about it is that she can also teleport mobs, but let me tell you, other than the fact that they're both really good at breaking some bosses, these two are very different when it comes to how their teleport works. Shoes is more like a rewind. After you set up her seated tiles, all she does is make enemies go back, which yes, it's pretty broken, but also smooth in a way. It's hard to find a word to describe it. But what I mean is that she doesn't force them out of their pathing. Instead, she simply rewinds them back to where they were previously. Yu, though, is the complete opposite. His teleport is a disrespectful pull that yanks the enemy out of their path so he can 1v1 them directly. Or 1v5 if you manage to pull that many. And because of that, his teleport has a lot of restrictions compared to Shu's to prevent him from breaking the game. She only needs the enemy to step on the seated tiles, and after that they're locked in place. Yu's teleport, though, is a targetable effect, so it doesn't work if the enemy has something like invisibility or invulnerability, which is more common on bosses. Another restriction is that for it to work, the enemy has to be reachable.
せかさないで滅びでコトコト
Reachable means that they must be able to walk up to you from where they are without needing to use something like a staircase. In the clip you just saw, for instance, the map can be separated in two areas. The first is this one that covers the top and right portions of the stage, while the second one covers the left and bottom areas mostly. Mobs inside one area can walk from any point in it to another directly, without needing to enter a staircase. Even if there is one in this example, they don't need to enter it, just walking over works. And this is how Yi determines who is reachable. If he is inside one area while his target's in another one, then it's not considered reachable and the teleport won't work. But if they're both inside the same one, then it can finally take effect. And that also happens on fenced tiles. Because they are isolated from every other tile around it, you also can't teleport enemies here. I don't need to tell you how restrictive this all is, but it's not as bad as you might think. It's only there to prevent you from completely breaking the AI of enemies, but it still allows you to play around with a lot of bosses. What really makes this skill busted is not just the teleport though, it's all the other buffs combined with the teleport.
あんまりいい心地じゃないでしょ次は悪いことするんじゃないぞ白露に鉱山で植え秋分に平原で植える
The 160% max HP boost lets him have more than 9k HP, 10k if you have his spot 4. And remember, Talent 1 gives him 25% Sanctuary for blocking something, so Yu is very hard to kill on S2. Even more so when we take his Talent 2 into consideration. What it does is passively heal him when 4 or more ops are on field. And I'm already gonna tell you, on its own this Talent is ass. It needs 3 other ops to work, which by itself is not hard, but after that he only heals for 1.5% of his max HP per second, which translates to 54 HP per second. So he is a bit better than Lancet 2. But remember, his S2 gives him plus 160% max HP, so the healing is even stronger there, going as high as 141 HP per second, which is slightly worse than 3-star Hibiscus without her skill. So it's still not that impressive, especially considering the types of enemies he'll be pulling with S2, be it bosses or groups of elites. I guess they had to balance giving him such a bust at Talent 1 somehow, and speaking of Talent 1, S2 also synergizes perfectly with it. Pulling everyone and increasing block count so you can burn more enemies is the obvious reason, but it's not just that. Remember, Yu applies burn based on how much attack he has, so by giving him plus 290% attack, S2 massively increases his burn application. And you can really see the difference when you compare it side by side, but the synergy still doesn't end there. Like I said on the S1 section, burn also reduces res, so turning all of Yu's attack into arch damage takes full advantage of every feature a burn proc has. It does have some weaknesses though. The first is pretty minor, but still worth talking about.
まだ抵抗するの少し激しい調理をしても 悪く思わないでよ
When I said he pulls every enemy in range, I really meant every one of them, and since his block count only goes up to 5, it's possible that some of the mobs he pulls will just run past him if the wave is big enough, even if you place another operator behind. Another thing that can happen is him running out of the skill, since it only lasts for 20 seconds. If that happens, then the same issue S1 had will appear again, and that's the fact it usually takes 2 procs to kill an elite, so if it ends before the second proc, not only will he lose his arts damage, but his burn buildup will also slow down considerably, making so he's stuck with some leftover elites while others go through. If only that 40-year-old hag I theorized about existed, her talent combined with that perma-burn aura would solve this. It would be extremely easy to kill elites in just 1 proc, and make this kill even more busted. S2 is extremely versatile. You can use it to play around with bosses, pair him with shoes so you have double teleport to lock enemies down, or just use him as a lane holder. It's a great skill both offensively and defensively with all those stats, allowing you to shred through waves of elites and even tank some bosses. He's not immortal with it, mind you, unless you pair him with Reed, then he's almost unkillable, and Yui's actually fucking amazing with Reed S2, because he makes it very easy to do the microwave combo with 2 ops, and his burn proc synergizes perfectly with it. Do you see why I glaze S2 so much? This is one of the best staging skills in CN, and it only gets stronger. How could it get better with time, you ask? Well, how about when they release a medic that also significantly improves his survival rate with her heals, while dealing AoE true damage to all enemies Q stacks up? Or a specialist that allows you to instantly redeploy an op, so it opens even more ways to abuse his teleport. Like I said, this is his best skill overall. You can fit it in basically any squad, so if you wanna mess around with a teleport or watch an entire stage burn as they try to go through him, you can't go wrong here.
急げ滅びてコトコト次は沈黙だ
Oh my god. What do you got? What are we doing?
We're blasting them. Are you ready?
Let's see.
Go!
He's not dying.
What do you mean, Demon? Look at his health!
I thought we're blasting it. What is this?
Blasting him, Demon.
Burn does not seem useful.
Finally then, we get to use most flashy skill, his S3.
急げはい熱い鍋に詰めたどうしようかな早く離れてくださいお願いします
It does have a lot more text than S2, but this one is a lot easier to explain since I don't need to show what in the fuck irreachable is. So, how much time do you have to learn what is source? Okay, first things first. S3 also gives all those good stat buffs as S2 provides, but the attack is a lot weaker in comparison, so U is worse at proccing burn here when blocking something, and I'll explain later how this affects S3. After the stats though, U finally brings out the main attraction, his firewall.
急げはい熱い鍋に詰めたどうしようかな早く離れてくださいお願いします
It's an infinite line that makes so every arts attack that crosses it will also deal 10% of Yu's attack as burn damage to enemies. And this is where that source damage I mentioned comes. The way the wall determines if an attack will apply burn is if the source of the damage is in one side while the damaged mob is on the other. That looks simple, but there are some not so obvious consequences to it. Both good and bad. The good is that because this is such a broad condition, operators that you might not even expect can make use of the firewall. Lapland and Gigi are the more famous examples, since the source of their drone damage comes from them, but there are some very unexpected ops who can do the same, like Ling on her S3. Yes, the damage on her S3 comes from her, not the dragon. Well, the arts damage aura, that is. So you can put her summons anywhere in the map, and as long as Ling is behind the wall, her S3 aura will apply burn. This is where the bad comes though. Because of the source condition, ops like Thorn's Altar can't apply burn with use S3, because all the damages alchemic units deal is sourceless, both on S2 and S3. As for how good use S3 is, well, that depends on who you're pairing him with more than anything. I mentioned Lep and Gigi are the most famous pairing earlier, and the reason for that is that they are the perfect example of what kind of skill you want you to buff. This is where the fact his attack increase is smaller on S3 than S2 comes in. Since every hit only deals 10% of use attack as burn damage, which is less than the 12% of his talent, and his attack increase is lower on S3 compared to on S2, the ops you pair him with will have a harder time proccing burn. The way to make up for that is using fast-hitting multi-target ops, someone like Aya or drone casters, and bonus points if your range is big like Gigi's and Lapland's are. Their skills also last for a long time, with Lapland specific cycling almost perfectly with use. And the difference he makes is huge. Take this clip for instance. Here Gigi and Lep already do pretty well against this elite heavy map, mostly because they only have 20 res, but when you slap you in, they are able to kill even more of the mecha suits, while also damaging the boss a lot more. For reference, each mecha has 39k HP, with Kristen herself having 60k and 50 res, so you can really see how much of a damage increase you gave them. And that increase only gets better the higher the enemy's res. There is one case where it's not that great though, which is against damage reduction, since some of the benefits of the burn proc are less effective here. I mean, don't get me wrong, the difference is very noticeable, but most of that comes from the damage tick, while the minus 20 res is less effective since the attack still has damage. So the difference isn't nearly as massive as in other cases without damage reduction. But hey, since we were theorizing before, maybe if that 40-year-old hag existed, she could have an S3 like Nymphs, one that deals elemental damage if the target's under burn proc. But we should be able to ignore most damage reductions in the game and solve this issue. She wouldn't even be able to buff the burn proc tick with that talent I made up. Well, that would create the same problem that Nymph S3 has, where only one up in the game can actually give full support to that skill, which would make so you is pretty much required if you want to use it in its full power. Hyperglyph will never make the same mistake twice in a row, right?
私の血が爆裂く日の出地平線まで燃え進む私の血だよ
Last and certainly least, S3 also has some team utility. It improves his talent 2 to cover the entire team rather than just you. You know, that one that heals for less than an off-skill Hibiscus, and that will heal for even less now since his max HP increases lower on S3. Well, now everyone can have it. Not only that, but did you know the wall doesn't affect just your attacks? Enemy projectiles have a 20% chance of being deleted when crossing it. And like I alluded before, this is quite whatever to be honest. It's a nice bonus to have, but the healing is so small and the delete chance is so abysmal that it might as well not even be there. And you won't even notice it even exists when using it most of the time. Overall, this is a very versatile skill, and that's S3's biggest strength. A lot of people focus too much on just the Mecha Caster combo, and yes, it is what most players will find to be the best one. But all you need is someone who can deal source darts damage and attack fast. He's so good that sometimes it's comparable to using 2 debuffers.
配軍みんなで手加減はできぬごめん
Like I said, S2 is still the highest ceiling skill, mostly because the utility of a teleport is really strong and tends to age better as they release more busted shit. But if you're in the majority of the player base that just wants to watch the world burn, you might find a lot more use here. And this is you. Every one of his skills can be very useful in different scenarios, from S1 being great against range mobs and having the best cycle depending on the map, to S2 turning him into a fortress, while having all the utility of a teleport, to S3 being one of the best damage amp skills you can find, while also opening the door to some of the funniest interactions in the game.
まだ抵抗するの？私が頼りんだ。
Wait, what? Oh, my bad, wrong clip. Let me just, wait, there you go, there you go.
熱い鍋に冷たい湯を沸かす私。危ないし。
Yu is one of the most versatile ops someone can have, and you really can't go wrong if you pull for him. I do have to make a confession though. The 40-year-old hag I was talking about throughout the video is actually real. No, not in real life. I wish women were real too, but I'm talking about inside the game. She isn't actually 40 though. She's even older than... Her name is Blaze, the Igniting Spark, and she works really well with you, especially when you combine their S3s. She isn't his best partner 100% of the time, since competing with global range is pretty tough in a lot of cases. But she does come out on top in many situations, especially when there's high res or damage reduction involved. Look, I'm sorry for keeping the existence of a 40-year-old Catwoman a secret from you, okay? Especially when she works so well with you. But this video is already long enough without me going in depth into her. So if you want to learn more about Blaze's kit, you can go watch this video. Comment what you think of you before you go though, and leave a like and subscribe too while you're at it.
せかさないで。あんまりいい心地じゃないでしょ。
伝統を乾かさコロ
なんだっ
まあいいや支障なし
That's it then. Bye.
け？悪くないね。このレシピはしばらく流行りそうだな。